Let's talk about some possible new Doom in the Tomb decks.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
Yeah, folks, with the return of 23 wild cards to standard format, there are inevitably going to be some new decks that pop up. Of course, current decks will be adjusted with new cards, and that will change things, but I want to identify 5 brand new archetypes, or at the very least, archetypes we haven't seen in a long time that might spring up into the meta. I have no idea if these will be good. The deck list I'm going to present certainly won't resemble the final version. You know, these are just theory-crafted lists. But I wanted to give you a preview of what's possible and also just offer some deck lists you can try out on day one for Doom in the Tomb. Just have some fun goofing around with some brand new deck ideas. That said, let's go ahead and take a look at 5 new decks. Up first here, I have one that I think is the most likely to make an impact on the meta. This is a new version of Tempo Mage. And this is somewhat similar to the Tempo Mage of old we saw with Flame Wakers powering all kinds of ridiculous stuff. Those decks also had a lot of burst damage and Alaneth and a secret package, and they could just overwhelm you with tons of damage. This one doesn't have all of those same tools, but it can still do a lot thanks to a card like Mana Cyclone. When you have a ton of cheap spells that are great for your Flame Wakers, and you also have Mana Cyclone, that means you can refill your hand. So dumping a ton of cheap spells is normally a big resource sacrifice. Mana Cyclone fixes that problem. And this looks a lot like a deck that's been in Wild recently. It's a Quest Mage, the old original Unguro quest, not a new quest. And it builds itself very much the same way. Now, this doesn't have the same payoff of the quest and Arcane Giants and all that stuff, but it still can wreak havoc on enemy boards because Flame Waker can chip through tons of minions. It can also just pump out a lot of face damage, right? If you get a Flame Waker and a Sorcerer's Apprentice and some Arcane Missiles and Cinder Storms and Frostbolts flying, you're going to do a ton of damage. And I think that's what makes this deck so powerful. It can play from behind onto the board by removing everything, and it can also just finish off opponents with all kinds of ridiculous nonsense. It's also got some late game threats in there like Archmage Antonitis, because when you have cards like Arcane Missiles, Magic Tricks, Mirror Images, and Elemental Evocations, Archmage can be a great kind of last resort card that can get you a win. It's also got lots of card draw to make sure things just keep moving. You find those Apprentice Flame Waker turns as fast as possible, and loads, of course, of cheap spells, many of which help you react to your opponent's board. So is this going to be the exact list? No, of course not. But it kind of captures the essence of what I think this deck will be about. Tons of cheap spells, Flame Wakers, Sorcerer's Apprentice discounts, Mana Cyclone refill, and probably just lots of damage, because Flame Waker makes dealing damage very, very good. So this is my take on Tempo Mage. Go out there. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think you'll be surprised if you haven't played Flame Waker recently, just how powerful that card can be. And I think this will end up being somewhere like a tier 2 or tier 3 deck. Of course, not this exact list, but one like it that uses some of these same core tools. So the highest chance in my mind to make the biggest impact on the meta. Another interesting deck here is a new kind of control priest utilizing namely N'Zoth and Sylvanas and Lightbomb coming back from Wild format. N'Zoth is just this great late game tool. And although Priest already has a card like Mass Resurrection, which can help them reload these really big boards late in the game, the primary difference there is Mass Resurrection pulls from all of your minions. So when you play Mass Res, it's hard to run like weaker, low-cost minions. So you often sacrifice some of that ability to be flexible and play stuff early in the game. But N'Zoth, because it's restricted to a very specific pool, you can toss pretty much anything into your deck and still know that your N'Zoth is going to offer you exactly the kind of big board you want. And to support N'Zoth here, we've got a handful of things. Kartut Defender and Convincing Infiltrator, kind of standard Death Rattle taunts right now, but you've also got Sylvanas Windrunner in there, which can be a lot of value added in too. So the Kartut's dying is going to add a lot of minions to the pool right off the bat. Sylvanas gives you something scary. Convincing Infiltrators create a lot of friction. So even if you haven't drawn all of those, N'Zoth's still going to give you a full board in many cases, full of lots of big, scary stuff. And the cool thing is, if you run Emperor Thaurissan in a deck like this, you can discount your N'Zoth to 9, and you can discount a card like Seance to 1 mana, enabling you to Seance your N'Zoth and play it multiple times. So you're not just looking at one big board necessarily, you can sometimes get 2. And depending on the matchup, that might be necessary. If they have a lot of removal, maybe that's something you have to do. Alternatively, if you're playing against a super control deck, like a Control Warrior, you can toss Archivist Elysiana in your deck, as we've done here, And you can also discount either her or a Seance and get multiple Elysianas, which at 9 mana has been hard without Emperor Thaurissan. So Emperor Thaurissan opens up a lot of opportunities for this deck. Now, to complement this kind of core Death Rattle package, I wanted to run a lot of early game because a lot of that stuff's big, slow, late game. So we have things like the Wild Pyromancer package in here to help you cast a lot of cheap spells and remove weaker enemy boards. We've got the removal package coming in with like Light Bomb. We've got just some single target removals like Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Pain, Seance to keep you up, some little AoEs like Holy Ripple. So I think between all of this, you've got ways to contest the early board, draw through a ton of cards with like Wild Pyromancer, Acolyte, Northshire Cleric, Circle of Healing, shenanigans. Like you can still find everything you need. And then if you can get to turn 6 or 7, you start dropping taunt bombs all the time, play towards your N'Zoth, and you just overwhelm your opponent with all kinds of absurd value. So essentially just a old school control priest that can do a lot bigger and cooler things because of a couple of these cards. Now, again, I mean, this list is not going to be what a final version of this deck looks like. There will be optimizations. We'll figure out the best build, but I think it will run some kind of N'Zoth style package, and that creates so much more opportunity for this deck. So I don't think this will be a tier 1 deck by any means, but something that's playable on tier 3. You might see the quest tossed in as well. I didn't want to like conflate or confuse things with a quest here for Priest, so I didn't toss it into this list, but that's certainly a possibility too, like a quest N'Zoth Priest. So whatever direction this deck goes, I think it will have some fringe viability. So now moving on to another one that's been probably one of the most talked about possibilities is Secret Paladin coming back with Mysterious Challenger, of course, doing crazy things in the old days of Hearthstone. This deck was just dominant when it was around. And Avenge coming back, probably the best Paladin secret ever. When you get that combination, Secret Paladin starts to look really enticing once more, particularly with cards like Mysterious Blade and Sunreaver Spy out there. Some great early game options. They give you a lot of value for your secrets. And then Commander Risa, like the ultimate secret synergy card that so far has fallen pretty flat. Also things like Bellringer Sentry and Mass Contender. There's a really cool little Secret Paladin package that helps you pull secrets out of your deck efficiently and also utilize those secrets for onboard advantages. So yeah, this deck makes a ton of sense. And a lot of it kind of builds itself. You just want a lot of secrets because things like Bellringer and Mysterious Challenger are ripping them out of your deck. So they're not usually going to disrupt your draw too much. There's always games where that happens, but most of the time it's not that big a deal. There's not a lot of punish on running a ton of secrets, right? You've got the secret synergy stuff that's pretty self-explanatory. I've tossed in some other just good cards and notably some like egg-style cards or death rattle-y cards because with secrets like Redemption and Avenge, it's beneficial to have things sticking around on board. This hasn't been something Secret Paladins had to think about because Avenge hasn't been around, but if your Avenge is going to be successful, you need minions on board. Things like Serpent Egg are great for that. That's why it's in this list. Even like Snip Snaps, little Death Rattle body, right? It's pretty good for this. You want sticky sorts of minions to make sure that these secrets are doing things. You've also got Blessing of Kings in there, so if you don't hit the Avenge on your egg, there are still ways to successfully utilize these egg-style cards. This is one variation of Secret Paladin that existed back in the day. I can remember playing a fair bit in Egg Secret Paladin, like Nerubian Eggs that did the same sort of thing. So just another opportunity to kind of bring that back to life. And then finally, you've got your Mysterious Challenger and a little bit of top end with Ragnaros here, just a big late game minion. The old version of this list used to run like Dr. Boom in that slot to follow up the Mysterious Challenger. Ragnaros unfortunately gapped a little there, but still the sort of card that might help you just get over the hump. If you do all the secret stuff, you don't quite get there. Ragnaros is the big sort of threat that can fix that problem. You might also be asking about the Wasteland Assassin. Might feel like a bit of a random throw in here for this deck, and it is totally, but I think it's really important that you have a minion going into your turn 6. You want to make sure that something's on board to interact with your Mysterious Challenger because of the Avenge style stuff. So I thought, hey, Wasteland Assassin's probably the stickiest, most survivable thing on turn 5 because it has stealth and it has reborn. So it's very difficult for your opponent to remove. So occasionally it's another egg kind of minion that hangs around and really empowers that Mysterious Challenger to do extra sorts of work. Now, if you have Noble Sacrifice, sometimes it's not a problem anyway, because they'll proc the Noble Sac, it will die, Avenge will go onto the Mysterious Challenger itself, but it can still help to spread those sorts of things out a little bit, just to make sure everything's working nicely. So this is my take on Secret Paladin. a lot of it's self-explanatory. Most of this package builds itself. How you complement that, I also considered like a mech package to kind of support this. So there's a handful of different ways it could go. But I think this is another deck that's not going to be tier 1, but it has some possibilities to be a competitive ladder deck. So next up here, let's take a look at Shaman. And this is a new build made possible by Evolve and Thing from Below. And it's a little bit of a fusion of the kind of aggro overload Shaman we see in standard format today. It's a deck you don't see often, but it's pretty competitive. And then also the wild Evolve Shaman that I've been playing a ton of quite successfully. We played this to top 100 Legend last month, but this is one that fuses those together and puts them in standard format. And the experience for this deck is all about evolving things like Mogu Flesh Shaper, which you cheat onto the board very efficiently because of its cost reductions, giving you a very cheap, sometimes 0 mana, 8 cost minion on board, which can obviously do a lot, particularly with Ragnaros in the pool now. You can get some early game rags. So essentially what the goal is with this deck is to build a wide board of stuff, get your Mogu down, and either evolve or mutate that Mogu, sometimes even witchy lackey that Mogu to make a big swing turn. There's also some stuff in here like Desert Hare, which might confuse you if you haven't seen me play the wild version of this list. But Desert Hare summons 3 3-drops. They're all 3 mana, unlike a card like Microtech Controller, which summons you a couple 1-drops. So if you can get an evolve off on a Desert Hare, then you get 4 4-drops for only 4 total mana. Desert Hare plus evolve. Plus Desert Hare is just a wide board card that supports Sea Giants and Mogu Flesh Shapers, so a very powerful sort of thing for this kind of deck. We've also got a secondary thing happening in here, which are totems. We've got Evil Totem, Nightmare Amalgam, and Hinch Clan Hag, which summons you 2 totems, so that your Thing from Belows can also be cheated out very efficiently as well. So a couple different ways to build wide boards and then leverage those wide boards into really powerful, kind of overcosted things for how much you're spending on them, or undercosted, I should say. Overvalued. Nah, I don't know. None of that phrasing works very well. But big things, very cheap is the goal. And also some follow-ups like Stormbringer in there, Former Champ, just a great another evolve and mutate sort of target. So Spirit of the Frog in there to help you find your evolves, help you find perhaps a Voltaic Burst to go wider, and even a Big Bad Voodoo, which is a nice card to have when you're playing big stuff, right? Big Bad Voodoo works nicely, and it helps you finish off that Spirit of the Frog chain. So a couple cool different little things coming together here for a list that I think will work really well. Again, I'm not certain I've got the right version here. This could totally change in a lot of ways. But I think some element of an Evolve, Desert Hare, Mogu Flesh Shaper package is going to be really, really good in Standard. And then finally here, one last list, and this one's a little crazier. I think this has the lowest likelihood to be a real thing. But I wanted to explore the possibility of Emperor Thaurissan opening up new OTK avenues. I think there are things like Holy Wrath Paladin that already fit Emperor Thaurissan in some pretty interesting ways. Like, that could be a cool addition. And maybe there's some more obvious OTKs, but I think there's a really cool OTK possible with Priest because of the Emperor Thaurissan discount. Since this is one that came to mind early, it's possible. I thought we'd talk about it. You guys let me know if you think this is going to be an insane idea. But the combo here is essentially you play a Leroy Jenkins. Well, first off, you discount 3 or more mana between Embalming Ritual, Leroy, and your Wretched Reclaimer. You need a total of 3 mana in discounts. You play a Leroy, you Embalming Ritual your Leroy, you then Wretched Reclaimer on that Leroy after attacking, right? So it did 6. You Wretched Reclaimer it, that summons you 2 new Leroys, the Reborn one and the Wretched Reclaimer one, right? So that's an additional 12 damage. You go face for an additional 12. Then, because of the Emperor Thaurissan discounts, you can actually do it again. You can play another Embalming Ritual on a Leroy and another Wretched Reclaimer, which is going to summon you 2 more Leroys. So essentially, what this means is you can summon 5 Leroys in a single turn for 30 damage, or kind of a true classic OTK. Clearly armor and stuff gets in the way. This is probably a lot worse than something like OTK Paladin. Keep all of that in mind when analyzing this deck, but it's something that you can do. Because of that possibility, hey, it's showing up. So the supporting package here is just a hyper draw package like what we saw in the Nomi Priest varieties of old, where you're just trying to make sure you find your combo pieces as fast as possible with a little splash of removal and survivability, but mostly just cycling so you can find everything, you can discount it, and then hopefully you can win the game. So instead of using like Chef Nomi as a win condition here, which is good often as a win condition, but doesn't just like win the game. This will instead just straight up win you the game. Now, it takes more pieces than Chef Nomi, right? So your deck's a little worse on average. It takes a little more time in some ways because you got to have a Thorson discount go off. So there are clearly some issues with this one. That's why I don't think this is ever actually going to be a thing. Mostly this is here to introduce the idea that OTK decks are going to be a new possibility with Thorson. Some weird build out there is going to make sense. It's going to line up because of that card, and that's what this is trying to capture, not this particular exact list. So just keep an eye out for some crazy random deaths in the near future, which I'm not super excited about, to be honest. Hopefully nothing too oppressive or powerful comes in to kind of destroy the meta, but I'm going to be keeping a close eye on it too. And there you go, folks. Those are 5 new decks. 4 that are good, maybe, or close to good, but at least some ideas, some things to chew on, some things to think about. Go give these decks a shot on day one. There are deck lists in the description below, of course. And let me know what you think. What decks do you think are going to pop up? What's going to be the new thing? What decks are going to get significant changes that are currently in the game, and how are they going to be much better thanks to some of these new wild cards? I want to hear all those thoughts, so of course, leave those in the comments below. But until then, thank you so very much for watching, and until next time, game on.